Hope everybody's okay this morning. So we're going to do another week's Facebook Live and this week's blog, which was always all about, ways to combat the comparison trap. So, what is the comparison trap? Well, the comparison trap is when we get into this trap or negative cycle of comparing ourselves or our lives against other people, against some other standard. Generally, it's we're looking at social media, we're looking at the news, we're looking at magazines, we're looking at the TV, and we're going, particularly with the advent of social media and reality TV shows, we're comparing ourselves more and more and more, and we really, really get into this negative trap so easily. It is a huge barrier to self-love, to self-acceptance. It brings out that inner critic. If you've any sort of issues at all, it's going to bring it up, and you're going to enter into that, negative cycle in your head in particular. So, it's going to increase your anxiety. It's going to increase your stress levels. It's going to bring up all those fears you have. So, the causes then, we could say, okay, the cause could be, you're watching social media, or you're watching this reality television show, or you're watching, reading, looking at these particular magazines, and you start comparing yourself. But in reality, what it is, it's this self-doubt is coming up. Your fears are coming up. Your insecurities that you have are coming up, and they're driving this negative comparison trap further and further and further. So I do go into a bit more detail about those particular three in the blog, and you can check it out at www.DeborahByrnePsychologyServices.com. But remember, it is the case, therefore, that you would have low self-esteem and low self-confidence, and you're really feeding, as I said, the negative thinking. It'll trigger, people pleasing if that's one of the things you do. It'll trigger your perfectionist mode if that's what you do, or you're controlling, if you're controlling behaviors. All of that, very much unhealthy boundaries as well, will come into play. They're going to start to creep up even more and more, and it's a habit. That's what it is. It's, when you sit down and you do this, it is a habit. You get in the habit of looking at social media and you start comparing yourself. It has become a habit for you. So you need to recognize that it's a habit in the first place. You recognize where it's coming from, where it's stemming from, and then you need to break it. You need to break this cycle. And when we do that, that's when we can change it. Now, I've lots of things in my mum's group. It's a free group, and I have a link in the description. And you can come and join it. We've got 9 modules. We're just about to go into a 10th one. But you can take your time in doing those modules, and they'll all help you overcome this comparison trap. It'll reduce your stress and anxiety as well, in particular. And I talk about a lot of things like self-care, and I do free meditation there. There are weekly tips on reducing your stress and your anxiety. There's boundary. I talk about building healthy boundaries, relationships, communication. There's a whole host of training workshops in there, all free. Come along, come join the group, and you can take part. So, 4 ways in this week's blog is what I've talked about. There's an awful lot of questions. So even I can't remember all the questions, so I will be reading some of these questions as I go through today's Facebook Live. The first one is to increase your awareness. I always say that to my mums. If you're not aware of it, you can't change it. So increase your awareness. Recognize how or what this is feeding. How am I thinking? How am I feeling? What are my thoughts around this? How am I reacting to all of this, to certain people, to these externals? What's going on internally for me that's, being fed or triggered by these externals? And I would use what's called the hot cross bun model. And again, if you want that worksheet, it's in the group, and you can come and look at it. And I explain it in greater detail in the group as to how you can use it and how you can use the 3 A's as well. So awareness being the first A. So some questions, and I have to read them because, I won't, as I said, I wouldn't remember all of these questions, but they are in detail in the blog, so go to check it out. So in around this increasing your awareness, what questions can you ask yourself? Well, what is it? What's the something or someone that I'm comparing myself to? That's the very first thing. What am I comparing myself to? What exactly is it? So is it a person? What is it about this person that I admire? What is it that's telling me I don't have what they have, but I really admire about this person? And if it's something, if it was somebody's job or something like that, or a job you'd love to have, well, what is it? What is it about that you want? And then what are three things you already have? What are three things you actually have? Because, you know, generally we do already have it, particularly if we have somebody that we admire, we generally do tend to have a lot of the qualities that we admire about them. What is it about the person, the situation, the house that we most admire, that appeals to me? The job, what does it appeal? What does appeal to me? Um, you know, why do I want it so much? So that's your awareness. Why do I want that so much? What's so great about it? And then the second thing to do then for yourself is, and it's really getting back to acceptance, which is our second day, in helping us do that, is to identify what we already have and what we're already good at. When we're in that comparison trap, we switch off all that. We switch it all. We throw it to one side and we go, nah, I have nothing at all. This person has everything I want, or this situation has everything I want. And we really do a disservice to our lives and ourselves by switching that off, what we actually have. So we have to think, well, what have I already got? What small wins can I recognize about myself to try and help me break that? Because sometimes it isn't looking for a big thing. If we can look for even the smallest thing, smallest wins, smallest things that we have, we can then, switch out and break this habit in our head of way we're thinking, because it is a way of thinking. So we're breaking that cycle and we're switching in and saying, no, 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 I have things. I have good things about myself. I have good things in my life. So, the questions around this then is, people often comment how well and fill in the blank. So what are you good at? What do you do? What do people say you're really good at? How have you helped them? And they said, thank you for helping you, basically. When faced with a challenge, and you can name the challenge, I'm always surprised at how good I can cope when faced with. So if you have a challenge, how have you surprised yourself, particularly this year? We've all survived this year. We're nearly at the end of this year, and we have really had to dig deep to get through this year. So, how did you surprise yourself this year? How did you cope? Remember, the comparison trap will be dismissing all of this. Name something you love. What do I love to do? Or what am I good at doing? What is it I love to do that always lifts my mood? That always makes me feel? And then you can name the feeling: happy, excited, contented. It just makes me feel a lot better about myself and about my situation. So what is it? Name it. Another question would be, I feel confident in my ability to. So what do you feel confident already to do? Is it around your children? How you're raising them? How, things that they do well because you've helped them learn those things. We don't give ourselves credit an awful lot, particularly as mums. We put an awful lot of feed input into our children, but we don't give ourselves credit for their achievements as well, and what our part we played in doing that. So that is one area. Your job, if you're working, your abilities around your job, your abilities around the house, your abilities to manage your money, that's a skill. Not everybody can do that. So how well are you doing it? What are you really good at? So you feel confident in that. You have something. Again, we're breaking the comparison traps. I wish I had time too. So what do you wish you had more time for to do? Because that always makes me feel better, puts me in a better mood. It always makes me feel good about myself. So what is it that's improving your mood, of making you feel happier, but you wish you had more time for? Again, we're looking at small wins here, small things that we can do to help us just break out of that cycle. You don't have to answer all of these questions, just a few of them. So 3 things that I am so proud of in my life. That can be, your job, you have a home, a roof over your head. It can be, you know, whatever it is, can be small ways that you already have, things that you're already so proud of in your life, your children, um, anything at all. Doesn't have to be a big achievement, a big success. Remember that it's small. It's about looking for the small things sometimes in order to break these kind of cycles. Be honest with yourself, because right now the comparison trap, if you're caught up in a comparison trap, that stops honesty. It really does. Honesty with ourselves, and that is such a pity. So we really need to become more honest with ourselves and maybe answer a few of those questions. The third way is to get vulnerable. We often make false assumptions about the people we're looking at. The reality shows do not show you the truth. They're going to show you what they want to portray. They will not show you the truth. People posting on social media are not showing you the truth. Um, they we always assume that somebody's doing a lot better than we are, and the reality is they're probably not, no matter how successful they appear to be. Um, and this again is the assumptions, and there's been a massive amount of study on this in terms of our happiness in particular. Um, you know, when we get into this assumption mode and the comparison trap, we really, we're really feeding those self doubts that we have about ourselves. We're really feeding our fears of failure, our fears of success, our insecurities. They're really getting fed. Um, but we have to realize people are human, no matter how big of a celebrity they are or whatever it is you're comparing yourself to. People are human. They're just like us. They have their own issues. They have their own problems. But when we jump to assumptions, we stop that. We really stop that. So again, questions we can ask ourselves in this is, what is it again? What is it about this person I most admire? What are the traits and qualities that I think that they possess that I don't? And a lot of time when we actually sit down, and I've done this myself, is I've sat down and said, well, what do I admire about that person? And but when I sat down and I thought about what those traits were and those qualities were, I actually realized I had most of those traits and qualities myself. Because, like attracts like. We're seeing a reflection in somebody else, ourselves, that we're not recognizing. And maybe that's, the universe or God, whoever you believe in, telling you, hey, stop, think. You actually have these qualities. I'm trying to show you you have those traits and qualities. But we don't do that. When we're in that comparison trap, we're making assumptions and we don't do that. Um, and that's really important. It's that in fact, if I was going to do any of these four suggestions, this one can be a real wake up call for an awful lot of people. And the opposite can be true too if you stop and think, well, what is it I don't like about this person? What would I not like about that lifestyle? What is it I wouldn't like about that? An awful lot of time when we think, oh, that celebrity has lovely hair, lovely this, lovely that, we don't stop and think about how living in the goldfish bowl, if you like, how their life is really affecting them. And would you really like to be under that much of a microscope? Um, that's just one thing we can do there. So the next one, number 4, then, is envision the future. When we're in the comparison trap again, that really stops our hopes, our dreams, and our own goals, because we get caught up in the fear, we get caught up in the self-doubt, get caught up in the insecurities. So therefore, we become afraid to step out of our world shrinks really, really small, and we become afraid to, fulfill our own dreams, our own goals, our own wants and needs, because we just feel not good enough when we're not able to do it. So again, some questions you can ask yourself here is, what fears and what securities are coming up for you? What's the self-doubt coming up? What is coming up? And how do they relate to the goal you want to achieve? So, you'd have the goal, you might list out some of your goals that you want to do, and then beside that, write down, well, why aren't you doing it, basically? What is the insecurity that's holding you back? What's the fear that's holding you back? What's the self-doubt that's holding you back? And, what would happen then? The next step would be to, well, what would happen if I actually did this? If I stepped out here and I did this? As they say, feel the fear and do it anyway. And what would happen if I did it? And then the opposite question will be, well, what happens if I never do it? What would happen if I never do this goal? How would I feel about it? How would I feel about myself? Um, so there's a lot of questions in this week's blog, and as I said, they're there. You can go and have a look at it. You can copy and paste if you want, and pop them in your journal. If you come into the group, there should be a worksheet in there with regards to these, so you can have a look at those. Again, daily positive habits, daily self-care, positive support systems, they all help you break this comparison trap. So it's not just about the questions and reviewing these questions. It is about having more positive support around yourself, switching off the social media and only checking it in every so often. And really remembering that no one is perfect. That's what it is. You're stepping back, you're looking at it, and you're realizing, whoa, nobody is perfect, and my life is good. My life is actually good, and getting that self-acceptance back again, and that's your aim with regard to these exercises. So I leave it there, and as always, thank you all for listening. I know a lot of people watch it in replay, and the invitation is there if you're a mum and you'd love to come and join my group. There is a link in the description. And as I said, there's an awful lot of free training there now at this stage. We've had free training for most of this year since lockdown started, the first lockdown started in March. So there's weeks and weeks and weeks of workshops and tips and strategies there for you to take and do in your own time. So do feel free to come along. And as always, thank you, Deirdre, for tuning in. It is a lovely morning here in Wexford. I have to agree, and I'll tweet you on Wexford Hour on Tuesday night. Anybody with a business, that's actually a great hour to get support over on Twitter if you want it. So I will talk to you all again as always next week. There'll be a blog as always on Monday, and I will see you then. Thank you.